Hello, everybody, and welcome to our March webinar, Zoho Sign 2021 Product Review and Best Practices. We've actually never done Zoho Sign before, so we're kind of excited and happy to be doing that. I am Brett Martin with Zenatta Consulting, and I am here with Tyler Colt, also of Zenatta Consulting. Good morning, Tyler.
Morning.
So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. If you just have general chit chat, go ahead and drop it in the chat box, and we'll try to address both as we kind of go through. We'll either do things in line. If we don't get to your questions while we're in the middle of the presentation, then we will do so at the end of the presentation. So for our agenda today, we're going to do a product overview, kind of go through everything that's going on in the product itself, where everything is. Then Tyler's going to take us through settings, templates, and sign forms. I'm then going to go through sign tags, and then I'm also going to talk about kind of a simple document automation at the end here using Zoho CRM, templates in Zoho CRM, Zoho Writer, and Zoho Sign for basically to create automated proposals from CRM to Writer to Sign and just kind of go all the way through that flow. And then we will do a quick Q&A here at the end. So with that, we'll get right into the general product overview. So this is the screen that you will see when you come into Zoho Sign. Right off the bat, they're giving you a send for signatures, a sign for yourself. That's kind of a quick down and dirty way to get something going. But for the most part, when you come in here, you'll probably be using the three or the four that we're seeing on the side here, which is documents, templates, sign forms, and reports. As you go through kind of each and every one of them, they have little submenus that pop up on the side. So in documents, really, I think the ones that I spend the most of the time looking at are the in progress, which basically tells you everything that is actually in progress at a specific time. And then I also spend a lot of time looking at what has expired. Oftentimes you'll send out a contract, maybe you've given it a 2-week expiration, but you're still engaged with somebody and you kind of want to unexpire it. So oftentimes I'll go ahead and I'll look in that expired section here and kind of go in, and one of the things you can do is you can actually unexpire a document and put it back into an active state. So to do so, you can kind of click into it, and you'll see you've got the big extend button up at the top. So at this point, you just go ahead, click extend, pick any date you want, and go ahead and extend that. And then once it's done, it's going to move back up into the in progress section. So you can basically easily extend documents and move them around. Once something's expired, it's not necessarily gone for good. Those are kind of the key. You can also look at anything that you've deleted in the past, all of your completed documents. Everything really is there for you to take a look at just from that main documents tab. And then when we go to the templates tab, again, this is where you're going to keep all of your templates. And Tyler's going to go into this in a little bit more detail and step you through all of the various templates and how they work and what you can do with them. And then you also have sign forms. And with sign forms, again, you've got the active, inactive, expired, and the number of limit is reached, because you actually can put limits on the number of people that can sign a sign form. And again, Tyler will take us through this in extreme detail as we go here. And then we have reports. Now, of all of the reports, I find that most of them they're rather simplistic. They're going to give you bar charts of, hey, how many were completed and on what dates. And if you want that information, you can. What I find to be extremely useful in the overall reporting aspect here is the activity history. When you click into that, you can see when documents were sent out, what activities going on around them, who basically did it, and what the document was. This is a really quick snapshot of everything that's going on inside Zoho Sign with all of your users. Again, this is kind of the report that I will spend most of the time in when I'm actually looking at any reports inside Zoho Sign. And then to round things off, I want to talk about this button down here. No matter where you are inside Zoho Sign, if you want to just go ahead and kind of quickly send a document, sign it yourself or use a template, you can just always click that plus button. You don't need to go back to the home page to get there. It's kind of a quick way of taking yourself to where you need to be without having to basically save yourself a couple of clicks, if you will. And the one thing I left out was settings, and Tyler is going to take us through the settings right now.
Yeah, and so we'll kind of go section by section here through the settings list and highlight some of the things that you will want to touch on as you roll out this application. So all these different settings basically live under the settings tab here over on the left. So first we'll jump into profile. This is basically set up unique for each user. This is going to cover things like, making sure you've got the right email on file. You can sign a job title and a company. One thing that is nice about the profile is you can actually draw or upload your signature or a stamp. So Zoho Sign is going to give you some pre-baked options if you want to just use one of their signatures, but you can actually upload your own and use that digitally on all of your documents. So kind of a nice way to just personalize it and make sure that your signature is as close as possible to your real one. Moving down the list here into notification settings, this is kind of going to cover all the different types of notifications that you want to receive internally. So that's kind of an important piece here, that these are really thinking about internal notifications. So these are things like, do we want to be notified when a document is signed or approved or recalled, right? We'll notice some of these we don't have turned on, like we don't want a notification just because someone viewed something, but you can actually do that if you want to, maybe follow up with it later. Over on the right-hand side are some admin level notifications in case you wanted to know anytime a user is added or removed. That could be useful if you do have anyone kind of delegated that is able to do those operations, but you still want to be privy to any changes. Moving down the list here, we'll jump to the user management. So within here, you can go ahead and add a user up in the top left. And then once everyone's been added, they basically roll into a big list where you can see, which email they're added under, what role they're in. And then if their account is active, you'll basically see, invited, granted, disabled, right, to track the status of people. I will highlight, if you are using Zoho One, you can also do this from your Zoho One panel, right? So you don't need to do this here if you're a Zoho One user, but if you have this as a standalone application, this is going to be where you do that. Now we're getting into some of the more dense settings. So within account settings, there's kind of a handful of different sections. First off with our sending options, this kind of covers everything for kind of client facing, right, as you're sending out these documents. So like Brett was talking about earlier, there is kind of an expiration of documents. It's going to default that to 15 days, but maybe you want to make it more. You could bump that up to 60 or 90, right, and give people however much time you want them to have. One really useful feature here is that you can set up automated reminders. And so in this case, right, we have the box checked, and then we're just sending a reminder every 5 days, right? Basically with a, hey, you've got an active document, click here to sign. Recipient authentication, our next little section, is something that you may want to activate. And basically what that is it's going to enforce that they have some type of authentication, like a secondary authentication to actually be able to sign a document. And then the use case of that is, if I were to send a document for signature over to Brett, he could, in theory, just forward that email to someone else and they could sign it, right? And so this is kind of a way to say, what, once they actually go to click it, we're going to send one more authentication to that user via either SMS or email to validate that they're the person signing. Now, no system is perfect. People could still game that and not actually sign it themselves, but it's a good best practice if you want to be extra secure. And then last but not least, down at the very bottom, you can actually set a standard email that you want to send out from. So you can use basically like a zohosign.com email, or you could authenticate your own or an organization email like, contracts@Zenatta, and use that as your default sender. Kind of the next little section here is around the recipient experience. So this is kind of like what's going to happen when you're actually looking at a document as the client. So we can actually say if we want to restrict certain modes of signature, right? We could say, hey, you know what? You're not allowed to just type it in. You have to either draw it or upload an image of your real signature. In terms of like the validity of those, they're all really treated the same. Either way, it's going to be a binding document, but you might want to, restrict those if your business requires it. Kind of down the line, we can assign certain actions that they can or cannot do, right? So we can say, hey, you're not allowed to assign this signature to anyone else. You're not allowed to skip anything. You're not allowed to download or email out this document. Generally speaking, you're going to want to allow people to do most of these things. If someone's going to sign a contract, I think it's fair that they get to download it. You'd only really want to turn that off if there was something proprietary in it that they weren't allowed to really walk away with. Again, screenshots are still a thing, so it's not going to be perfect, but you could turn that off. If we move down the page a little bit, we'll see there are some additional fields kind of at the bottom. So we have, the signer hint box. I would recommend leaving that on. That basically is just going to allow the user to fly through the list, right? So every time they enter a field, it pops up a hint on the next one and will actually move their page to what they need to fill in next. That one just makes it way easier to get through one of these documents. And then lastly here, we can choose who should be able to basically view any attachments uploaded. So you can actually have someone upload an attachment as part of the signature. And there you're kind of just saying who gets permissions on that. And moving kind of into our, go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say, and the allow custom redirection to landing pages is a big one too. So you can actually read after they're done, you can kind of redirect them to a URL instead of the default page after they completed the action. So it's one more thing to look at there.
A good one that we see people do there is redirect to a like FAQ page, right? Or a new customer page, right? Because that's kind of where they're at in the process now. We'll talk about the next one super quick. They actually have enabled blockchain stamping. If you do want to do that for your business, obviously kind of a new thing. Definitely a shiny object that they've added here. Probably not a ton of use for it quite yet, but in line with, DocuSign, Adobe Sign, they're all kind of starting to adopt this technology, which just is one more level of verification that Zoho isn't hosting themselves to validate that something was signed. So never hurts. Obviously we don't expect Zoho to really be going anywhere, but in a hypothetical world where, Zoho Sign doesn't exist anymore, this would give you a way to still verify that a document was signed. Moving down the list, this one becomes pretty important if you're going to use any custom emails to send out. So in this case, we have our demo domain here. This is kind of your standard domain authentication. You're going to drop a DKIM and an SPF record into your domain. Just going to help you not get into people's spam list if you are going to send as yourself through Zoho Sign. Definitely something we would advise doing.
It's important to note here, you have a lot of authentication going on. They're trying in Zoho One, they're trying to kind of pull it all together, but it's really not. So you will need to do this for CRM, for Sign, for Zoho One, for campaigns. You want to verify, you want to see if the DKIM is the same. If it is, then you're okay. If it's not, then it's different. And the SPF. So unfortunately, you kind of have to go through this several times.
And then last, but definitely not least, you can actually activate automatic cloud backups, which is really, really nice. So you can actually choose from a variety of different cloud storages, anything from OneDrive, OneDrive, Google Drive, all the big players are supported. And basically what this is going to do is just automatically pull all of your completed documents into another folder, right, that you designate in one of those services. Just kind of another level of redundancy to make sure that you've got your contracts on hand for whenever you may need them. Kind of our next little set of settings is a quick one. It's just our organization details. So here you can come in, drop in your company name, drop in your street and city and all the kind of default values. You can also load your logo in here, which allows you to then, kind of dynamically bring that into any of your email templates that are going out. So kind of an important one to do, but one that won't take you very long to set up. Lastly, or not lastly, but next here, we can look quickly at the subscription details. Not something you're going to need to mess with a lot, but you can see, what plan you're on, when you're going to be paying, how many users you've got. If you wanted to, change who the owner of the system was, you can come in and do that here, and you can make any modifications as well. The second half here is really something for, developers to be aware of. So This is kind of where you're going to be keeping an eye on your API and SMS credits. I do want to highlight, we're not going to dive into it here. And when Brett walks through his setup later for the CRM, it's important to know that that process does not consume any credits. So, just keep that in mind as you view that. But if you are creating signed documents through Zoho Flow or through a third-party integration, or even through Deluge or Zoho's kind of scripting language, those are going to consume API credits. And so this is where you'll go to buy and manage those. They have to be purchased in one-time increments, but they will notify you anytime that you're getting low. So just something to be aware of if you are going to kind of go down the path of automating a lot of this, is that there is kind of an ongoing cost with these credits, but you've got the tools to manage them here.
And the API credits sell for 50 cents a piece. If you're buying large amounts, you actually can go negotiate. You'll have to do it directly with Zoho to kind of lower them as well. And hopefully it changes soon, but if you actually click on the buy API credits button and you purchase the API credits, when it's done, it says your SMS credits are confirmed, but it'll actually put them into your API credits. So don't panic there. But it is actually anything around automation. You are going to consume these. Not really a lot, and although their price at 50 cents might seem high, it is much cheaper than most of the other Zoho Sign or the other sign applications that are out there today.
Yep. Kind of next little set of settings here are the email templates. So they kind of come pre-baked with a bunch of different templates in the system, and you can jump in and customize them pretty easily here. So first you will need to turn it on. The screen's going to look pretty blank with just the on and off button in the top left. Once you turn it on, we'll see all the different templates that can be customized. And up on the top right of the page with that edit template button, we can actually pop one of these open and go ahead and begin editing. We're not going to dig in too much of this. It basically works like any little email editor, right? You can drop in custom HTML. You can kind of type right onto that page. I do want to highlight, even if you don't want to come in here and do a lot of in-depth customization, it's super easy to just quickly set the colors of everything to make it a little more brand specific. So maybe I want to get rid of this mint and red and kind of make it look a little more Zenatta, so I can change it over to different set of colors. Those do work with hex codes, so you should be able to get that pretty much spot on to any of your branded colors. One little additional settings section here, kind of more for the developers in the room. You can actually set up webhooks inside of Zoho Sign. In essence, a webhook is just a way to send a set of data to another place. So maybe you're going to integrate this with your, a third-party system. Maybe you want to route some of this through Zoho Flow and do some cool stuff in the CRM with it. But I do just want to highlight, there's actually a really robust set of triggers that you can use for these. So you can actually be running automations when someone views a document, when one person completes it, when everybody completes it, right? Maybe if someone declines something, you want to go in and update their CRM contact and say they've declined it, right? And you can do all those with some automations built on top of these webhooks. That could be its own whole webinar, so we're not going to go too in depth on that right now, but just know that there's a lot of power under the hood for automating things based on different actions in your documents.
All right, let's go through templates here.
And so templates are really what are going to make this or maximize how useful Zoho Sign is for you. And a template is basically just a document that we can upload, assign some fields to it, and then kind of pre-bake a template that we can use and send out to multiple users. So when you pull this up, first thing you're going to do is go ahead and upload a file just right into the box there. So in this case, we're just going to work through a kind of simple W9. Maybe we want to send this out to new hires. I do want to highlight, if we go back one slide, the template name is always going to include the .pdf from your document. So if you uploaded a docx, it's going to be .docx. You can go ahead and remove that from the template name. It's not going to break anything and it looks a lot better. So if we jump to that next slide, we'll see just that all I do is just get rid of that .pdf so that when they get an email and it says, hey, we've requested that you sign this document, it'll say W9 Zenatta without the .pdf. And then down there at the bottom, if we go back one slide, we'll see we've added one of our signers, right? So we've just given them a name for client. We've left the 2 boxes underneath client empty because that's where the client's email and name are going to go. And on the right, we've said this is someone who's going to need to sign this document. But that's not all we can do. So we can actually add a couple more users, right? So maybe we want to say that our HR department needs to countersign it. So we've added HR as Zenatta. And then maybe we want to say, hey, anytime a W-9 is completed, we just want a general admin inbox to just receive a copy of it, right? Oftentimes with cloud backup and things like that, you don't really need to do that. But there's a lot of cases where you might want someone to just get a copy every time that something is done. So you can go ahead and add someone and choose that they're just going to receive a copy. One last thing you can do is actually set someone as an approver. So maybe if you want your team to have to cycle a document through you first before it ever goes out for signature, you can do that just with the dropdown as well. Moving down the list, a couple additional settings. So it's going to pull in those days to complete. Whatever we set up in settings is going to be the default, but you can actually change it for a template. So maybe organization-wide, your default is 60, but for something like a W-9, we want it right now. So we're going to give them 15 days to do that. You can categorize things in different document types and write a quick description. And then of course, choose whether or not you do want those automatic reminders to go out. Now kind of into the good stuff here. So now that we have kind of set up all the basics, up in the top right, we'll see those recipients that we've added, right? For client, our HR, and our admin, right? And so currently we have client selected. So if we go ahead and look at our fields down in the bottom right, then we can kind of see the different types of things that we can add to the record. An important thing to know is that whichever recipient is highlighted up at the top is the one who's going to be assigned the field once we add it in. So if I go ahead and just drag a text box into the record here, we can add a little box under the number 1 field on our W-9 just for that person's name. When you have the field selected over on the right-hand side, we can again confirm who we want the recipient to be, decide if this should be required. You can set default values and choose some of the font sizings. For developers, that data label field on the right is what you would use if you're going to create this via API and you want to pre-fill it. But again, we're not going to dig into that in much detail. And then it's important to know as well that, they have a variety of different field types. So, we're not just restricted to text boxes. So if we wanted to add a, kind of radio button to select one of a handful of options, we can go ahead and drag that in here. And then of course we can add our signature and sign date fields to the record as well. Now I want to highlight when you're choosing which field types to use, it's pretty flexible. You could use a full name or a text box to get someone's name. It's not really going to matter too much. But once you're actually getting the sign and dates, that's where it's really important that you use signature and sign date, because those have some pre-built functionality that are unique to those fields. And then lastly, maybe if we wanted to add a field in for, requester's name and address, we could go ahead and select our Zenatta HR and then go ahead and just drag a field into the record that they would fill out. The nice thing is everything stays color coded. So you'll be able to quickly see, who would be assigned to each of these fields just based on the colors that pop in on them. And then once we have that completed, now it's just going to live here in our list of templates. And if you ever do want to just quickly send one out, you can basically click on that template and it'll pull up a quick send. And all we would need to do is just drop in someone's email and name and then hit send and we are good to go. So again, really like if you have a lot of those docs that you're sending out regularly, go ahead and take the time to make it into a template because it's going to save you just a bunch of work in the long run. Alrighty, and then the last little thing we can do is actually create sign forms. First of all, I'll just give a quick description of a sign form and why you might want to use it. So a sign form is basically a link that will navigate someone to a page where they can put in their name and email. And once they enter that in, it'll basically allow them to work through and sign that document, right? All just driven by one link. Reasons you may want to do that is like maybe for something like a W-9, you don't want to manually send that out to everyone. Maybe when you hire someone, you're just going to send them one big onboarding email and you just want to put a link that says, click here to submit your W-9. So you would create a sign form and then put that link into the email. And then it's just as good as if you sent it out directly to them. I do want to highlight, these do consume API credits when you use a sign form. So if you want to roll something like this out, it's just important to know that there is that element of cost. Now, it's still going to be a lot faster than sending them out manually. So you kind of have to do the pro con of the time saved versus the cost per document and see where that break even is for you. But once we're in here, it's a pretty quick little process. So first we'll go ahead and choose a template. There are a couple rules in there, like if you have multiple signers, all of them need to have a field added before you can do this. So if something doesn't pop in there, there's that little learn more button and it'll highlight kind of why a template might not appear. Moving down the page, we'll go ahead and give this a name. So in this case, we're just going to give it a nice simple name, W9 sign form. We can choose the number of responses that we want to allow on this. And, again, that might seem silly at first, but knowing that there's a cost to each of these submissions, you might want to keep these low and regenerate them regularly, just in case they ever fall into the wrong hands. Someone could consume a bunch of API credits pretty quickly. If you are using sign forms, enforcing OTP or kind of that second level of verification is probably a good idea. So if you have that on, rather than allowing them to just fill in their info and sign, they would fill in their info and then be emailed the document to sign through their email. So it's just another layer of verification to make sure that they actually are that person. And then lastly, you can set an expiration date on this. So generally, when I do these, I'll set a maximum responses, but not make it expire on a certain date if it's something I'm going to reuse for a long time. But you can say, it only has a couple months of life. So once you have that created, then you can go ahead and click on the little 3 dots and copy that URL. And when someone clicks that URL, it's basically going to pop up a little page like this. They're going to enter their name and email. And in this case, I don't have OTP on, so it's just going to allow me to sign. But once I click start signing, it just pulls up our document just like it would if they were emailed this doc, and they can confirm and kind of work through the fields. And then at the very end, again, based on our settings, in this case, we're allowing them to take the document with them. So if we go one more slide forward, we'll see a little place to go ahead and either download or have that document emailed out to me.
All right, and that brings us now to sign tags. So we've covered most of the stuff that you will find kind of internally inside Zoho Sign now. So if you go there, those are kind of the things that will be there natively. Here are a couple things that don't really exist in Sign. They're kind of outside Sign, but are part of it. So what is a sign tag? A sign tag allows you to embed things in a document. So let's say you have created a document and you want to just upload that document to Zoho Sign, and you want all of the fields to be completely pre-mapped for you. You can do that by the use of Zoho Sign tags. So these are for your signature, company, person's name, email. You can have random text fields that'll do anything. It'll pull in their job title, initials, date, and checkbox. Everything you saw in the other section when you're manually doing this. This allows you in a document to go ahead and place these fields. And the formatting on it basically is the field type, what the recipient number is. So you might see on this one, it's company recipient 2. You could have recipient 1. Maybe you've got the same field. You've got 8 people that need to sign a document. So you would have 8 different signature fields as that as well. So you can go ahead and put all of these in. And then when you do, your document would kind of look like this. So this is kind of just a base document for signatures. Whereas you can see, you've got Zenatta Consulting, and this is using signature recipient 2. This one is using the general signature box. And then since I am signing, I would be recipient 2 sign date and the contact sign date. And we'll talk a little about some of these other tags here that you see here in a minute. But the ones with the kind of the double brackets here, the squiggly brackets, for lack of a better name, those are your sign tags. And so when you pull this actually into the Zoho Sign then, so if you were to upload this document, you don't have to go through and move all these over. They actually already appear here and they're ready to go. So you basically the document can go in, and you then can very quickly just go ahead and send it, because all of the fields have been properly mapped to where they need to go into the contract. So what does that look like in the real world? Well, a simple document automation that we see all day long, and that we do for clients all day long and teach clients how to do, is basically going ahead and creating a template in the CRM. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a template. Then what you're going to do is create a mail merge template. So I've got one I put in here called Zenatta Consulting SOW. And if you go in, you have a whole lot of things you can do here. So when you're building out these templates, you actually have the ability to pull in fields from whatever record you're working on, as well as any records that are related to that record. So in this case, I'm looking at a deal, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to pull in the account name that's associated with that deal, and it's going to pull in the contact name that's associated with that deal. And then down here at the very bottom, you can see I have the sign tags that are perfectly put in here. You notice also here, this is again pulling from the CRM. I've got the contact and then the account name one more time. So when you go ahead and, you basically go ahead and construct your entire agreement in the CRM as a template. And then once you've done that and you've got all your fields, maybe you're pulling in the client's address, maybe you're pulling in billing information. Our templates are extremely detailed. You can pull in subforms into these. You can pull in, how many hours, maybe how much work you're doing, you name it. You basically can construct these and make them look very nice and create these templates that are just pretty much ready to go at any time. So what does that look like? So here I am, I'm in the deal. And what I'm going to do is you're going to click on this little ellipse up here, and that is going to bring down a sub menu in which you will see mail merge. And by clicking the mail merge, it's going to ask you which template you want to choose. And you choose the one. You could have a variety of templates. When you build these templates, you are building them though for a specific module. So if you're wanting to send something out of contacts, you're going to create a mail merge template specifically for contacts. If you're going to send them out of deals, you're going to create a mail merge template for deals, leads, accounts, so on. So it's important to know that you're only going to be able to select the template as long as you've made it and it's associated with the right module. In this case, I'm in deals. I have this SOW and contract. You basically click the merge button. And once you go ahead and click that merge button, it's going to take you to this page. This is just kind of a pre-page where you can kind of check everything out and go through the document. You really don't want to make any major changes here unless you're wanting to do an update to the template. Most of the time you're going to click, it's going to give you this page, and you're just going to click this Run Merge button. Once you click the Run Merge button, it's actually going to take you out of the CRM completely and put you into Zoho Writer. And this is really important because once you're in Zoho Writer, you have an entire suite of tools that are available to you. So here you can do any custom editing. You can kind of go through the document, see if there's anything you're missing, anything you want to do. You can compose, you can send it for review. But what we're going to talk about here is the distribute button. And once you've got your document ready to go, if you go ahead and click distribute, it's going to bring up these options for you. So you actually can publish this document to the web. You can email it. You can turn it into a blog post. You can create another template out of this template. You probably wouldn't want to do that. Download it, print it. But what do we care about? What we care about here is the upload to Sign services. And when you do that, you have Zoho Sign, Adobe Sign, DocuSign, and Sign Easy. So if you have any of those accounts, those are already integrated in, and you can easily send a document that way. But we're talking about Zoho Sign here. So you basically just select Zoho Sign. It's now going to ask you to go ahead and upload the document to Zoho Sign. Once the document is successfully uploaded, you will hit next, and this will take you directly into Zoho Sign. And as you can see, you basically have got the contract there ready to go. All of the links, everything we've looked at before, where all the sign fields are perfectly in place, everything's done. All you have to do is put the email in, add yourself, and go ahead and send it out, and it's completely ready to go. So that's a nice automation, making sure that the data that you have in your CRM matches up with the data that you've got inside any contracts or anything you're putting out. So a real kind of simple use of sign tags there, as well as a base automation inside the CRM.
And a couple little things to highlight about some values of doing things that way is like, if the document is being generated using CRM data, it's an extra incentive for the team to make sure that the CRM data is accurate. So if Brett wants to prepare, a contract and it's going to involve 30 hours, well, if he knows that that field is going to pull from the deal, then it's a nice little incentive for the team to actually log that value in the deal consistently, because then the contract will just be completed for them. One other little minor usability thing to note as you go through those steps to do mail merges, they're actually going to open new windows. And so we have seen with some people, the first time they try to do it, it'll get caught in a pop-up blocker. So just something to double check as if you take this webinar and kind of go and play around with this to set it up yourself. If things aren't popping up as you're running the mail merge, just check that pop-up blocker. And once you allow them, it should be good to go moving forward.
All right, and let's move on to our Q&A. We've got one from David. Can you use Word with the templates? This permits you to use MS Word features when adding data to the doc before you send it out. Yes, you can do Word and you can upload it. It's going to get converted, but you can go ahead and use Word, and then you can upload it as a template. I'm not sure it's going to get you, I guess so. So it's going to give you the Word features for dialing it in. It depends. I think the conversion I have found to be exceptionally good between Microsoft Word when it gets uploaded into Zoho Writer. You may have some issues where things will break a little bit. I don't know. I would think for the most part, it's going to be pretty good. I will tell you, for example, we actually use, we have a very complex template. And we do something where we want to pull in different sections. So we want the entire document to be dynamic. So depending on in a deal, I will have this multi-select pick list and I will choose 8 things. And those are the 8 sections that are going to be written into that specific deal. That actually lives in a product that we've talked about a lot called Form Stack. So you click a button, it sends it out to the web in Form Stack, and then it sends it down to you. That is a Word document. So that entire thing is a complete Word template and it's done. And when it downloads, it actually puts it right into Zoho Writer and it looks perfect every time. So I think that would work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yes, you could redirect. Once they sign up a document based on upon the document they sign, you could redirect them to a welcome package as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We had one little question pop into chat as well. Is mail merge not an option when you're using sales orders in the CRM? So the sales orders kind of live in their own little section where you'll have those inventory templates right next to mail merge. And so you can customize those templates there and then use that functionality. I think they call it like export or something. They don't call it mail merge when you're using the CRM sales orders.
Right. But that same function is kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from anyone? Yes. How does Zoho Sign compare to Adobe Sign? I use Adobe Sign now. I will say that it is a extremely full-featured application. Adobe Sign is kind of the king of the hill, though. I would say it's one of those that's up there that's best in class. Zoho, for the most part, gets it done. One of the few things that it doesn't do well is it has very bad permissioning. So your user permissions and user access, you really only have 2 right now, which is an admin and a user. And a lot of people that come from Adobe Sign have got some really, really deep permissions and accesses for their users. So if you're doing that a lot, it can be a little bit of a problem. I don't know. Anything you want to add to that, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Zoho Sign, a lot of the long-term benefits to using it come from using it within Zoho. So if you're able to, write some functions that send these out automatically and do things like that. As like a standalone, if you're just picking one or the other, of course, Adobe Sign's a market leader. But in terms of the core functionality there, it's a great application. But yeah, you'll bump into a few of those things like the permissions and, some of the little bits of customization that you might not be able to do.
All right, we got a question from Harold Tan. Is there a way to attach a PDF, like a third-party quote or proposal, to the Zoho Sign template for mail merge?
I might need to follow up on this. So when you're running through and you're doing this, so if you were to walk through that template and get to the final page, you actually can attach additional documents before you send it out and create it as kind of like a packet. So here we see, like, if you had another quote sitting on your desktop, right, you could actually drag that in and send it along with your contract here.
And you could manually map fields to it once I think you've got it.
Yeah, once you've added it, you could pull it
Yeah.
up and actually assign fields.
Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Harold.
And with, again, if you're doing it via an automation, like in Deluge, you can actually grab multiple files and send them as a packet. So if you had your quote like attached to a deal, right, and you press the magical, send sign button that you would need someone to kind of code for you, you could actually grab multiple attachments and send them, but you might need to still go through and add the fields once it's prepared as a draft.
All right, it looks like that's it. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Before we go, though, we've got some announcements coming up. So we are going to do 2 webinars in April. On April 1st, no kidding, we're going to do the Zoho CRM workflows one. Tired of hearing me say no kidding, Tyler? We've been talking about this. We've actually had this requested over and over and over again, that we do an entire basically webinar on CRM workflows. So we're going to cover beginners to advanced and step you through that. And that's going to be on April 1st at 10 a.m. Pacific. That's on a Thursday. We normally do them on a Tuesday. So mark your calendars on that. And then we're going to do one on Zoho People. It's going to be our standard overview and best practices webinar. And that is going to be Tuesday, the 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific. And as always, if you want to know about events, all Zoho events, not just ones we do, not just one Zoho does, any other partner, anybody who's doing a Zoho event, if we can find it, we go ahead and we post it to CRM Zen over on the events page. And if you go to that events page, you can basically find anything and everything that you are looking for. Hopefully, at least we try to keep it up to date with everything that every events in the world of Zoho anyway. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Appreciate you being with us today. If you have any questions or comments, please head over to zenatta.com or crmzen.com, and you can drop us a line there.
And as well, be sure to follow us on all of your favorite social media platforms and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app if you have one over at CRM Zen. Of course, this webinar and any other content that we create also gets posted out to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Zenatta. Thanks everyone for joining us.